Hello and welcome back to the CodeIgniter series. We have created our user model and controller, and so this video we're going to create a form that's to be able to register the users. I've went ahead and added the register controller because this video we're going to be concentrating on the form itself. But just to go over this, if we've posted for a new user, then we're going to load the user model. We're going to create the user, and then we're actually going to log them in and redirect them. And if not, then we're going to load the form helper, and then we're going to load our header and footer with the register user. You'll just want to make sure that you auto load the form helper, or you have loaded the form helper on the register function. And this helper is what we're going to use today. So let's create this view of register user. This is how our form would look without using CodeIgniter's form helper. So you can see it's very standard. We would have some type of URL to go to. We would have the text boxes, the password boxes, select boxes, and the register. We're actually going to be changing just about all of this, but I wanted to show you an example of what we're going to be making using CodeIgniter. You should probably load CodeIgniter's user guide and look up the form helper, because you're definitely going to want to look at this even after we're done, because there's a lot of different options and they give you great examples. Let's just start from the top. Instead of this form here, we're going to say form open, and then we just put where we want it to post to. And in this case, we want it to go to the user's controller, and we want it to go to register. That's going to do the same thing that we had in HTML. Then the closing form is just going to be like you'd probably think, form close, without any variables in it. Then the submit button is going to be just about the same thing. We're going to say echo form submit, and I don't want a name for it, so I'm going to leave that blank, but I want the value to be register. So you can see it looks exactly the same, but we're taking advantage of CodeIgniter. So now let's change this username input box. And I'm going to create an array, and I'm just going to call it data form. You can call it whatever you want. Imagine this is all the properties to the input. So we have the name of it as username. We could say we want the size of it to be 50. We could add a style to it. We can add an ID if we wanted to. It's the same basic principles as you would do in HTML. Then what we do is we echo form input, and we attach that array that we just created. Let's go ahead and look at this. Now we can see it's added the style, it's added the size, it's longer than the password box. I like how this is laid out, and that's not the only advantage of using this form helper, and you're going to see more advantage of this as we go along. Now we have the password box. But first, let's change this. Instead of saying password, let's make it a label. All you would do is say form label. Then the first one is what the label is going to say, and the second is what it's connected to. So we're going to have something called password. Then we're going to add another data array. And first things first, we need to add an ID of password, so it's connected to that label. We're going to make the name the same thing. Let's do the size as 50 to make it uniform. And instead of doing a style, let's actually give it a class. Then we would echo, instead of form input, we would just do form password. Let's go ahead and add that class. If we refresh, we can see it's a password box. If we were to click on the label, it goes to the right text box. Now let's do the select box. I'm going to make an array called options, and I like to always make the first value be blank. Then let's add the different user types. And you can see the first one is the actual value and the second is the label. And then what we do is we echo form dropdown. The first one is the name of it. The second is going to be the options that we just made. And the third is going to be what we want selected by default. So I could type in admin and it would select that one first. But I want it to be blank by default. We can see it's the same drop down as before, but let's say we wanted to add something like maybe some JavaScript, like we wanted a function onChange. So we're going to create another variable called JS, and this is where you can put whatever you want. So I'm going to say onChange equals an alert. You could add whatever you want here. You could do a style here, you could do a class. So this last option is going to be whatever you wanted to add to that select. So we can see it added the border, and now it's saying hi whenever we change the value. Of course, we wouldn't want to actually do that because it would drive people insane. As you saw, there's a lot of different options, and it's very simple to use CodeIgniter's form helper. In the next video, we're going to continue off what we did, and we're actually going to work on the controller on when we register the user, and we're going to add some validation.